What up? What up? What up? It's your man Sean P. Coming in live on YouTube once again. This time we have an international show for the first time ever. Our international guest. Thank you for coming to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. It's great to be here.
Yes, ma'am. The pleasure is all mine. Let me do your official introduction. Today's guest we have Mrs. Eden Royce, a Charleston-born storyteller now living in Southeast England, who work weaves folklore, family, and the supernatural into something unforgettable. Unforgettable. She's a Shirley Jackson Award winner, a Brown Stoker finalist, and a writer whose books for young readers and adults alike have earned honors across the board. Simply put, she's the conjurer of words, and we're honored to have her today with us here today on the podcast. Thank you, Miss Eden.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that amazing introduction.
Thank you very much. So the title of this show is called "Sitting with the Griots" podcast, paying homage to the ancient storytellers of old, our African griots and grioties for the ladies. How do you feel about being called a modern day griot? And whenever you think about that moniker, do you feel any kind of weight or pressure to carry that title?
I'm honored by the title. I feel like putting a term on something gives it not only importance, but it gives it this weight, but weight not necessarily in a burden sense, but weight in a seriousness sense. Like this is important work. This is a tradition that's being passed down. And I feel honored that someone would sort of crown me with that term. And looking back at the people in my life that have been amazing storytellers, or the people that I used to read and still read, just their tales that just stick with me. I feel like it's something that I'm proud to wear. I don't think that I feel a burden necessarily, but I do feel a duty. And I think that making it a duty as opposed to a burden makes it feel like something that you're welcome to take on. I'm wanting to take this on, and a burden makes it feel more like, whew, I don't want to do this.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I totally agree. Thanks for that. Totally agree. So when it comes to your brand new book, Psycho, Pomp and Circumstance. I love this book cover, by the way. You're a cover person. They did a phenomenal job with the details. A lot
Thank you
going
so
on
much.
here. So I want to ask you about the title, first of all. Here's the attention. Psycho, Pomp and Circumstance. Give us like the why to your title.
Absolutely. I first want to shout out my cover artist, who is Greg Ruth. Um, he did an amazing job. He usually does covers with like action scenes and like swords and martial arts and stuff like that. But when we approached him about doing this cover, he said, "You know what? I want to give it a try. I want to give it a try to do a softer cover." And I think he knocked it out of the park. So I'm grateful for the
Yes.
work that he did on the cover. Um, Psychopomp and Circumstance came from two places, or the title came from two places. Back in the day when I was in school, I was in band. And one of the songs that we always played, we played for all the graduations, and you always play Pomp and Circumstance. Anybody hears it, they know what the song is for. It's this grandeur and this ceremony. And it also came from psychopomp, which is a term for a person or a creature that leads souls into the afterlife. So I wanted to put something with leading souls into the afterlife, but also the grandeur and ceremony that goes with that, as opposed to the way that sometimes people think about funerals as this depressing, sad, um, heavy event. I wanted it to be important, but I didn't want it to come with uh, the labor of pain that people seem to think that funerals come from. Additionally, I grew up in a family where when there was a death in the family and we were planning the homegoing or we were going to a ceremony, everybody in the family went, including kids. So I've been going to funerals since I was really young, and it wasn't something that I was ever afraid of. But there have been some people in my family, and sort of I hear people saying now that they don't want their kids to attend funerals because they see it as traumatic, or the kid's going to experience something that they don't want them to be a part of. And I think that breeds fear, because one of the things that people fear most is the unknown, something that they don't know, that they don't understand. And there's enough unknown about what happens, with death. But I think that having a ceremony where family gets together, you know, even if it's for someone's end of life, is a great thing for kids to be a part of. So most of my work that's novels has been written for kids. And I said, I want to write something that's for adults, but something that deals with a funeral and funeral planning, but not in a way that is scary, not in a way that makes it sound frightening. To celebrate someone's life is a beautiful thing. And I wanted that to come across in the book.
Yes, it is. It is a very beautiful thing. The most honorable thing to celebrate somebody's life. You
That's
mentioned being in a band just now. We can't just slide past that. What did you play? What did you
I'm
play?
already saying stuff that I usually don't say on interviews.
I love
Um,
it. I love it. They exclusive.
the exclusive. I played the clarinet. I was also in orchestra, so I played the violin as well, but I was better at the clarinet. So I was in marching band back in the day, many, 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 many years
Yes,
ago.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Shout out to the band members. My little cousin right now is in the esteemed Grambling State University marching band. The world fame.
Oh yeah,
HBCUs, man. So shout out. Matter of fact, the
that's
Battle of the Bands
great.
coming up in a few weeks. The Battle of the Bands. So shout out to the
Oh yeah,
band
that's
members.
that's the elite, the top tier.
I love it. I love it. I respect it. Total respect to the band, right? So my next thing, so I know this book is a work of fiction, but there's always research and things to be done, even in fictional storytelling. What was some of your research like creating a book like this?
Most of my research, because when I do research, I love to do not only library and internet research, but I love to do research that's more ethnographic and talking to people whose specialty is the subject that I'm writing about, or even elders who have maybe handled funerals in a different way than we do now. So most of my book research and online research was the Reconstruction era, which is a time period just after the end of the Civil War in the United States that a lot of people don't know about, and certainly a lot of people don't write about in fiction. It's a time frame that I wanted to portray on the page because so many people seem to think that Black history starts with slavery and then goes straight to hip hop. Like there's no in between. And the Reconstruction era, post Civil War, there were Black people that had businesses. Uh, there were lots of inventions. Black people held seats in Congress. Black people voted. So I wanted to set something in this time period where I could have a young, free Black woman who's from a well to do family. Her father owns a business. Um, they go to society events. Her mother has this idea in mind for her that she's going to marry another wealthy Black uh, man in the society and basically raise more families like theirs. And I wanted to set it in this time frame so that people know that we have that it's realistic to have people that are of this stage in society, this socioeconomic background, but also, there are a lot of people that watch TV shows like Bridgerton and they loved seeing the spectacle. They loved seeing the beautiful outfits, the history of it. And I wanted to be able to show a time period where we we also have the grandeur and the beautiful outfits
Yeah,
and time
yeah,
taken to go to the dances and getting dressed up and dolled up and all of that. We have those periods in our history. And just because they don't appear on the page very often, I wanted to make that the focal point of this. Um, I also talked a lot with family members, like, do you remember what so and so's funeral was like? A lot of the funerals that I've been to, I haven't been in the planning stages. I planned my grandmother's funeral, which we chatted about a little while ago. But once I finished the book, turned it in, and I had to wait to hear back from the editor about any changes that they wanted. So I got the changes back, and they went, okay, here's the edits that we want you to make and the changes and the updates. And during that time, when I was working on the edits for the book, my father passed away. So it was I was doing two things at once, trying to plan his homegoing and working on this fictional homegoing at the same time. So it was almost in a strange way helpful, even though I was dealing with a lot of different emotions at the time. It was something I was able to not put on my character necessarily, but help inform some of her decisions. Because even though she's in grief, she's in a place where she's got to get it done. And that's where I was working from, and I was just thinking, I've got to get this done as well. And it was just a lot happening in my personal life also. But it gave me a chance to talk with my mom and other family members that were calling or coming by to say, tell me about so-and-so's funeral. What did you do for that? What was different? What could you do back in the day that you can't do anymore? In my debut novel, which is called Root Magic, a kid's novel, but deals a lot with the 1960s in South Carolina, Gullah Geechee culture. One of the opening scenes in the book is a funeral. And it talks about an old Gullah Geechee custom at funerals, which is passing babies over the coffin. And it was a Gullah Geechee tradition that I've heard people say happens in certain areas of the Caribbean and certain areas of West Africa as well, where it's a ritual done in order to help the deceased move along, help their spirit move along so that they don't linger and come back because there's, a child that they are wanting to care for. So one of those things that really, really helped cement all of the details in Psychopomp was listening to those real life stories about so-and-so's funeral. This is what we did for Aunt Maggie's funeral. This is what we did for Uncle Charles's funeral. And taking those little bits and pieces and putting them together. There's another Gullah Geechee ritual called the Buzzard Lope. Back in the days of enslavement, we were not able to tend our dead if someone fell over in the fields, someone died, and you were forced to keep moving. You were forced to keep working and ignore that person who's fallen. And it's a horrible thing, but it was what we were forced to do at the time. And it's one of those, one of the origins of some of our work songs, just trying to get past a lot of those experiences and that deep pain. But at the end of the day, when you're finally able to stop working and you went to that person, unfortunately, a lot of times in the South, the heat, deterioration, the buzzards would get to that person first. So one of the rituals, and I'll call it a funereal ritual, is everyone in the community would form a circle and one person usually a man, would be in the center, sort of symbolizing the buzzard, and they would encircle him, sticks pounding because we weren't allowed drums, sticks or brooms pounding. And he would dance in the center over usually a handkerchief or a scrap of cloth that was white, symbolizing the person's spirit. And he would sing and chant as he sort of moved in this bird-like motion, and would eventually pick up and cradle the piece of cloth as a symbol of taking care of that person's spirit. And that's one of the things that's mentioned in the book, very briefly and obviously shrouded in fiction. But if you're familiar with the story and you're familiar with the practice, that's something that you would see and recognize.
Man, that is incredible. See, this is why to my nonfiction book loving friends, I'm always trying to push them to read more fiction because there are so many things that are accurate and it's just covered in magical realism and other things. But
Yes, yes.
our actual rituals and tales and things are in these books. So I'm always trying to advise my friends, like, please, read more about fictional work, man, because it's a lot in there.
Absolutely. And fiction writers, we love research and we love folklore and we love to put that into our work. So absolutely, if there's anybody out there that thinks fiction is just all made up, there is a lot of truth in those stories that you can pull out and then further research yourself if you ever want to do that.
So I love being educational on this podcast for the listeners. And before reading this book, I never heard about it. So let's get into it. The
Hmm.
genre of Southern Gothic. I've never, probably my first book I've read on purpose with this genre. But tell us about the Southern Gothic genre and how did you come to love writing in this genre?
There's a lot of people that have these big definitions of what Southern Gothic means. And for me, the definition of Southern Gothic is work written about the lives of Southern people. And for people who are not from the South or don't know people from the South, they tend to sometimes see Southern Gothic as magical realism, or they think it's all fantasy and all made up. But there are a lot of Southern people who, in their day to day lives, will mention ghosts or spirits or little rituals that they do every day, tossing salt over their shoulder or sweeping at a certain time of day. All of these little many everyday rituals are sort of woven deep into Southern culture that we don't always think of them as magical. But when you pick up the lives of Southern people and put them into a story, people go, "Oh my gosh, that's an amazing fantasy story. That's an amazing magical background that you've created." And yeah, I embellish a little bit and I put bells and whistles on things, but a lot of times I'm writing about hoodoo culture, or I'm writing about my grandmother would never call it hoodoo. She would just call it that's the way things are done. The way that you had to have all of those clothes washed on New Year's Eve. The house had to be sparkling on New Year's Eve. First meal of the new year would be Hoppin' John, would be collard greens for luck, and there'd be a certain way that you would make them. So all of these things are hoodoo practices that people don't necessarily like or use that term always, but that's where it comes from. So just the lives of Southern people is my definition of Southern Gothic. And I've always loved writing about my people and the things that we do, the way that we think, because I've always been a reader and I love reading about cultures. But sometimes you read something and you go, this is clearly not a Southern person as this character, because there is no way that we would do anything close to that. So it just made me want to write my own stories because I loved tons of genres. I would read my mom's old books from high school and college that I found up in an attic, but then I had my library card, so I would go and read things that just appealed to me from the library. I had friends that we exchanged books. So I've always loved reading, and it just sort of naturally made me go, I love this story, but it's hard to find when I was growing up stories written about the South and fiction stories that were written about the South that didn't portray us in a negative light. Because a lot of times people would like to write about Black people in Southern fiction, but it would just be as a backdrop. Or if they needed a character to get killed off in a story or something. And I just went, we need to be main characters. We need to drive the story. The way we think, the way we respond to things, the way that we have personal relationships, those need to be the focus of the story. And that's really what brought me to Southern Gothic, because I felt like sometimes I would write something and I'd have a hard time classifying it. And I go, well, I know this is fiction, but there's a little bit of fantasy in it. There's a little bit of magical realism in it. There's a little bit of truth in it. But it's not quite literary, but it's not quite. So I thought about it and I did a little bit of research and I thought, well, this is Southern Gothic. It's talking about the lives of Southern people and how the past informs our everyday life now. But I didn't see any Black people claiming the genre at the time. And I can understand that. I can understand Black people at first not wanting to claim a genre that has been very firmly white and I would say almost exclusively white. But I thought, this is what I want. Why not? This is what I write. Why not call it what it is? And I embraced that from pretty much day one of this is mostly what I write, mostly what I do. So I'm pleased to see that more and more people and more Black people are incorporating Southern Gothic into their work. Just because it's different than the Southern Gothic of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, it still fits the term.
And when it comes to the genre, who are some of the authors that inspired you or motivated you to write this book?
Oh gosh, funnily enough, I don't know that a lot of the people that inspired me to write the way that I write and what I write are necessarily Southern writers. But I love a lot of us, one of the Southern writers is Zora Neale Hurston, who I've always loved. But I love the work of J. California Cooper, who is not a Southerner, but the way she writes is just familiar and it feels like home and it feels like you went over to your auntie's house and y'all are sitting on the porch and she said, let me tell you this story. And I love her work for that. And a lot of her work is also short story collections, which give you just this flavor of Black lives and the joy and pain of our existence in different parts of the world and how we can still triumph regardless of our start in life. And I love her work for that. One of my favorite books is called The Conjure Man Dies by Rudolph Fisher. It is I think it's the first all Black mystery novel ever published in the United States. It was published, I want to say, 1922 or something like that. And it's the book that I always refer people to if anybody ever says, well, how do you write a book with all Black people that are in the same area, but make them sound different, like different characters? And I'm like, if you need to know that, read The Conjure Man Dies, because this is an all Black cast of figuring out who done it in this mystery. Everybody's Black, everybody's from Harlem, but he is able to make everyone sound distinct. So even when they don't say and do an attribution of this is the character that's speaking, you know who it is. And it's just a fantastic book.
Yeah, and researching for this interview. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just I was. Don't let me ramble on about books because I will just go on and on. But
Hey,
one more I
that's what we
wanted.
here for. We want the ramble. On the Soul P experience, we love books. We love hearing our authors talk about their passions. So please ramble away.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I will say Mama Day by Gloria Naylor is an amazing book. And honestly, anything by Virginia Hamilton. She wrote a lot of folk tales and collaborated with illustrators to just make these gorgeous illustrated books of African American folk tales that I loved as a kid and still have some of them on my bookshelf now.
Thank you for that recommended reading list. Definitely take notes. Anybody watching this on YouTube later, definitely pause the show and write your books down and go out there and get them. I know I do it when I'm watching shows like this. I'm always taking notes when I'm watching the podcast. So he gave you a recommended reading list right here. Um, when I was researching this show, I realized that Zora Neale Hurston, Toni Morrison, Jesmyn Ward, Kiese Layman, Jamila Minix, they all have this style of writing. I don't know if they would call themselves Southern Gothic, as you said earlier, but they are definitely in that tradition of writing our people, our language, our culture, rituals, and it's so heavily laced in there you can't miss it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if they claim that genre either, but I love their work for their portrayal of us, in all of our good and bad and indifferent. And I think sometimes writers are worried about portraying us as characters in a negative light. And I do understand that, but we are very diverse in not only our backgrounds, but we're diverse in our experiences with other people. And we are diverse in that we can be good guys, we can be bad guys, we can be somewhere in between, we can be different depending on who we're interacting with. And I think it's absolutely fair and honest to portray that on the page.
I think about certain Toni Morrison books I've read, or even Jamila Minnie's book, Moonrise Over New Jessup. You're right. In the whole book, the protagonist, the antagonist, like any part of it, the good guy, the love interest is all black. They might mention white people. There might be an occasional a landlord or something in passing, but for the most part, 90% of that work is just straight black people, and I love seeing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the reviewers for Psychopomp and Circumstance mentioned that to me, that they were just like, I'm amazed that this book has a cast of all black people. But they said, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't go in the book saying, this person is black, this person is black, this person is also black. And I said, no, it's because it's the default here. I think the back cover says that she's a free black character, but in the text of the book, I don't ever mention anybody's. And I'm like, this is a part of the world that we're in. This is who we're dealing with. These are the lives that we're discussing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I want to ask you this question about um, the planning of a funeral. You mentioned it a little while ago about planning for your grandmother and for your father. Now, I haven't done the literal planning process yet, uh, but for those of us that haven't done it ever, like, try to put us in the mindset of what it takes to be in that emotional place. Because, like, going through grief like 3 different times in my life, it's funny how your brain just it gets different in grief. Like your memory, you can't remember things. You can't think straight. And there's certain things that need to be done. Like these are they're timely matters. You have a lot of time to think about it. So it's like every person isn't as well planned in advance, unfortunately. So somebody has to carry that way of doing it. Put us in the mind frame of what that's like, if you can.
It was very different with losing my grandmother versus losing my father. My grandmother had everything planned. When my grandfather passed away, which was before I was born, and she had to plan his funeral, she just said, you know what? I'm just going to do everything twice because I'm going to leave here at some point. So when she had to buy his plot for burial, she bought the one next to him. When she had to put together insurance claims and insurance forms, she had a folder with all of her stuff in it. She had a little receipt for everything that she'd purchased. I knew what sort of casket she wanted, all of that stuff. So she was a planner, and she knew how hard it is to plan something in the midst of grief. And she didn't want me to take on that burden any more than I had to. So it was just like, here's the template. All you need to do is hold yourself together long enough to do these things. And in the area where I'm from, there was only two funeral homes that Black people used. We are very specific with who did the body, and that is a thing. And our family was a Fielding's Home for Funerals family, so there wasn't any question of who I was calling to do it. And it was just a matter of putting myself in the position of, I have the responsibility and the duty to do this for my grandmother, but also I'm doing it to take it away from my mother because I didn't want her to have to deal with it. And I was at work when I found out. And my grandmother had been ill for some time, and my boss knew that. And when I found out, I went straight to my boss and told her what happened. And I had a great boss at the time. She just said, go, do what you got to do. And I went home, packed a bag, and I was on the road in less than an hour from Charlotte to Charleston. And I knew what I needed to do, and I knew I needed to get that folder out of my grandmother's room so that I knew who to call. I had to call not only the funeral homes, I had to call family members. I had my laptop with me, and I had to write the notice for the paper, the white one and the black paper, putting together the funeral program, all of these things, calling family members and navigating everybody else's grief. So when I'm calling my aunts and my uncles saying, this happened, this is when I have the date planned. No, we're not changing it. You've just got to get a flight or get in the car or whatever. I can't change it because everybody's got a different time that's best for them. This is the time that's best for us here at the house. So do your best to make it. And my grandmother was one of those people in the community that if you needed something, whether it was a couple of dollars or you needed some advice or you didn't have food and you needed something, she was that person. And the number of people that came through that house the day of the wake and then the day of the funeral, we didn't have to cook anything. We didn't have to lift a finger for that. Thankfully, that burden was taken off of my hands. And everybody just came out in support. But things happen, and sometimes the phone would ring and it would be something I hadn't anticipated. And just being on top of it and getting it done and getting it figured out. Unfortunately, with my father, it was different because he died unexpectedly. So he didn't have any plans in place. We had to just look for everything. We had to make some assumptions on what he wanted. And I think that we did a decent job of it, but a lot of times people don't enjoy talking about what they want for their last. My grandmother didn't mind because she grew up in a different time where people needed to know what you wanted. And my father was not really a person who wanted to talk about that. So I had to make a lot of guesses. And I think I did a decent job at the end of it. But We all do the best we can with end of life planning, but I think it put me in a good place to show how grief affects people differently and how people have to compartmentalize their thoughts. There's very little time for your own grief when you're doing that. So it's like you have this task in front of you, and focusing on the task is the only thing that gets you to that next step. And when it's all over, when it's all done, when everybody's gone home and all the food's packed away and all of that sort of stuff, that's when you can have your time. But a lot of people, especially people like me who get into that mode of get it done, it takes longer than that. It takes longer than everybody getting out of the house. It might take you a month. It might take you a year. It might take you a couple years. It might take one of your close friends losing somebody, or you're seeing a movie that's similar to the situation that you went through, for you to go, oh, I haven't grieved this. Oh, I remember now. I haven't done what I needed to do for myself. And allowing yourself to do that whenever that time comes is so incredibly important.
It's a good time for a little small caveat, man. If anybody watching the show, watching it in the future, man, like definitely start trying to put those plans in place because you want to think ahead. None of us want to deal with this thought. You don't want to think about it, but to ease the burden of your family members and everything, I think it is something definitely important to consider.
I agree. I agree. And no, it's not fun to face and you don't want to think about it, but the people that you do leave behind, they have so much going on in their lives, and they're now dealing with the loss of you, and try and do as much for them as much as you can for them. It's filling out a couple of forms, it's thinking about it and writing down, this is what I'd like to have happen. And you can probably get it done in an afternoon and get that paperwork set aside or filed with, whoever, and it'll be off your mind, and you just tell someone where to find it, and then it can be done, and you have the security of knowing that not only are your wishes done, but somebody has a template to follow to make it a little easier.
And one more thing before we pivot off of this topic, but like what we just laid out, that's the best case scenario. Like insurance in place, the plot, the funeral director. But like for a lot of people, they don't have the ability to get insurance and to have certain things. So it's even crazier for the family trying to find a way. How we going to pay for this? How we going to mean? It's a pretty expensive thing. If you've never done it before, a casket
Absolutely.
costs more than what you might think. All these other things cost more than what you might think. So try to
Absolutely.
scramble and do it all of a sudden is even a crazier burden on family.
It really is. And if you have the time to do this, if you are not in the midst of planning, it's a good idea to sort of take into account what your individual, if you're in the US, where your individual state allows you to do. A lot of people don't like um, cremation. They want to be buried, but there are different things that you can use besides just a heavy oak casket. You can use other things that are still um, putting your loved one to rest in a very honorable way. And Tales from the Fandom here, I do see just even writing down accounts or basic plans of what you want done is helpful. The number of people I've seen that have had loved ones pass away unexpectedly, you can't even get into their email account, or you're not listed as the beneficiary or the next of kin with their job. A lot of people are working a job where they've never filled out next of kin with their company. So you can't even contact the place they work to say, does this person have insurance? And something like that is just a simple phone call to HR, or hey, email me the form so I can check a box and send it back to you. It's just little things like that that you may not think about that can help your loved one at the end, especially if it's something as simple as this sheet of paper, that sheet of paper, if it's something unexpected.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for those wonderful words, man. Let's go to the topic of food. So I noticed in a lot of Southern writing, especially in fiction, food is always heavy. And we go into fine details about the dish and how they made it, the taste and everything. So give us the importance of food in your stories, what it means to you. You mentioned a lot of food in this tale.
There's a lot of food. There's a lot of Southern food. Um, Food is love. Food is care. You know, making a dish for someone, taking time out of your day and everything else that you have to do to create a dish for someone is a loving, caring thing to do. And when someone is bereaved, a lot of times that goes by the wayside. Either you aren't eating something, or you aren't eating enough, or you're eating the wrong thing. And someone going, here, I've brought you this so that you can take care of yourself when you're not in the mindset to do this on your own. And it is an act of care. It's a way to show love and appreciation for someone. And in a lot of cultures, bringing food to the bereaved is exactly that. This is a tribute. We understand you're going through something. And in Psychopomp and Circumstance, there's a lot of um, Southern food. There's Benny seed candies, there's sweet potato pone, there's rice bread. There's a lot of food that is innate to the Gullah Geechee culture. And I always include a lot of food in my writings because I think that it's people from TV shows and such. People have, I think, a misunderstanding sometimes of what Southern food is and what it can be. It's not all of the add 15 sticks of butter to everything, um, everything deep fried all the time. It's a lot of our um, food culture that's been brought from West and West Central Africa to the American South. It's a lot of one pot meals, what my grandmother would call long pot meals. It's using a lot of what the earth provides. It's a lot of fish. It's a lot of shellfish. It's a lot of rice and beans and peas and things like that. And I wanted to reflect that in the book because a lot of times people go, oh, Southern food, oh, it's so heavy, oh, it's so this. And I say, well, you just are uninformed about what some Southern food is.
You're right. And like living in these hard economic times here in the US, of course you see all the things going on with SNAP benefits and other kind of things about food scarcity, and having conversations about thinking back on what did our grandparents make. A lot of our grandparents didn't have all that much money. If you think back on it, like wait, we were never hungry. We always had something. What did they make back then that stretched X amount of days, and kind of going back to that, trying to remember those things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's very much my culture and Gullah Geechee culture to have what's called subsistence farms, meaning every family has a small patch of land where they grow something, whether it's tomatoes or okra or something. So there's something that you as a family produce for your people to eat. And living in the community that I did, it was very much a nobody goes hungry. If somebody went fishing or shrimping and they got a lot, they would come by the house and go, look, we got plenty. Here, we brought you some. And then when my grandmother baked a cake or whatever have you, she would cut part of it and go, take this down to Miss So-and-so's house because you shared what you had, because not everybody has all the time. And it was a way that our ancestors lived, bartering, borrowing. I don't really have a farm. I don't have as much land as you do, but if you need somebody to come and fix something on your property, I'll come fix this for you. And then this is what I'll give you in trade. We've given you some ingredients from the garden, or we've given you something already made, already cooked, whatever have you. And this is what I think a lot of people are missing in their lives now. They may not have those resources, they may not have those people, but they also may not necessarily cook the way our grandparents and our great grandparents did. They knew how to use maybe a small amount of meat to make a big portion of something. They knew how to make just peas taste good or just rice taste good. And not everybody knows and understands that. And maybe getting back to some of those meals, some of those simple meals, so that maybe when we have feast times, you can add more expensive ingredients. But when you have famine times, you don't suffer.
Yeah, I remember growing up, man, my grandmother being an amazing cook. And she'll make a great dish. And so I'll be at school the next day just thinking, and I'm gonna go home, get some leftovers, and when I get home, it'll be gone. And I'm like, wait a minute, like what happened to it? And she, oh, I gave it to Miss So and So, and I gave it to so and so, and it'll be frustrating as a kid, but like it was understood that it was everything was communal. We had a very
Yeah,
communal living, like you said, like we had a big old garden. My grandfather had an incredible green thumb, so we always had an abundance of everything. He always gave everything away. Everything was given away, really. And so
yeah.
I'm kind of sort of like that in my own way. I try to be I'm a very giving person by nature, but it's all I saw growing up was to give. So
And I think that sometimes people worry if I give something away, I won't have it for myself, and I'm creating scarcity, for myself. And maybe changing the way that the outlook of there's plenty around. It's just a matter of sometimes you have to give to get back.
yes, ma'am. I want to go to family tension, right? Family tension is a heavy
Mhm.
theme in the book. And so of course, in every family there seems to be the black sheep, if you will. So think about the position of being the black sheep of the family or the odd person out, and like how that shapes a person whenever you are kind of the outcast of the family.
It's it's a hard thing being the black sheep of the family where you're not the person that gets listened to. Even if you speak up, people dismiss your comments, your ideas. People don't understand the things that are important to you. Maybe they don't understand your career. Maybe they don't understand your choice of partner. Maybe they don't understand, just in general, your lifestyle of choice. And Fee in the book is, even though she's the only child of this family, she's already thinking differently than the way her parents want her to. And not a lot has changed between 1861 and now, from a sometimes your parents just want something for you that you don't want for yourself. And when you speak up, you either get dismissed or you'll change your mind, or why are you thinking like that? Our family is not a family that does this. So there's a lot of that hasn't changed in that time. And Fee is not only facing that from her family, but society at large has an idea of what's right for women, what's right for blacks, what's right for free blacks. This is what you should do. Don't you know blacks are free now? It's important for you to procreate and make more, you know, free black people to fill up society. And she's wrestling with all of these ideals that get pushed at her when she wasn't ever really able to embrace the things that she wanted to do. She's like, I would love to work for my father, I would love to be a bookkeeper for his business. I'm good at that. But no, that's not a job that's suitable. That's not something that we want you to do. And being the black sheep of the family, she's still wanting to be included in her family, but everything that she wants to do, everything that she thinks of is just, she gets shut out. And she realizes that her aunt, who's been exiled from the family, who she has every intention of going to visit when she gets old enough, when she gets old enough to break away from her parents' influence, she's going to go visit her. And she never gets the chance because her aunt passes away. So that when she finds that out, she thinks, what have I done? I could have gone to visit her, but here I am sitting here fighting with my parents over not marrying this dude that's not good for me. And in a way, she's always seen her aunt as having this freedom that she doesn't have. Being a black sheep of the family gives a certain amount of freedom. And it's not until she thinks about her own position as, I'm a free person in society, but my parents have this cage around me of expectation. And it's gone from my aunt now because they just go, she's a lost cause. And part of her goes, I kind of want to be a lost cause too, because I want to be able to have that freedom. And that's a big theme of the book, is freedom, like from different things, not just freedom from enslavement, but freedom from family expectation, freedom from societal expectation, and freedom from what the world thinks you should do. And those are the things that Fee really, at the end, wrestles with. What do I want to be free of? And being free of these means I'm on my own, and am I okay being on my own for the first time, and can I do this without the support of my parents?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And from the black sheep conversation, we're going to the difficulty between mother-daughter relationships when they have this tension and they have this wedge in between them. And I know a few people that have difficult mother-daughter dynamics, and it's always difficult to watch that. I know my mom and myself, we are so incredibly close. I can't imagine what it would be like if we had this kind of thing between us, but that would be like for me. So think about
Mhm.
the difficulty in that.
Mother-daughter relationships can be really complicated because you can be really close to your mom, especially as a daughter. You can be really close to your mom, but then still have a relationship that's a little bit strained when it comes to certain subjects. Sometimes the relationship is just strained in general and you're just not close, but you can still be close to your mother for most things. You know, A through V, you're close to your mother. But when it comes to the XYZ of it, those are the things that you butt heads about. And sometimes it's because the mother has a vision that your life as the daughter is something similar to the way she experienced life when she was your age. Why can't you be like this? Why can't you just do that? Because they almost see you as a smaller version or younger version of themselves. And when they were your age, they were able to do that and it was fine. Why can't you do that? Or why can't you dress this way? Or why can't you date this nice boy over here when you know that he's nice to your mother, but he's not that nice to you? He's very different when you're alone. So there are certain things that can be, yes, there's very that you'd be so pretty if you just wore your hair like this, or wore a little bit more makeup or jewelry or whatever. So there's always a little bit of tension sometimes in mothers and daughters, especially when that daughter wants something different than the mother sees for them. If your mother was the type of mother that was very glamorous and loved wearing dresses and getting dolled up, but you're a little bit more of a tomboy that doesn't ever want to get out of jeans, she's going to see that as a problem. She's going to see that as a difference of something that she has to fix. Mothers are fixers by nature. And they just go, oh, well, let me do this. Let me check that. Put this on. And instead of embracing that, you've got somebody in your family that's a little bit different to you, and that's fine. Would you love to see them, wearing pink? Okay, yes, but they're not. They love wearing black. It is what it is. And I think if there were a little bit more just acceptance, maybe not, I won't go so far as to say understanding, because sometimes people want to understand. Well, why are you like this? I don't understand. And if we could move away from understanding into just accepting, more of the, that's just the way she is, she's fine. I think that would go a long way. And I think embracing understanding is harder because you have your own experience, which is different to the other person, right? But just accepting, it is what it is. We do that with situations, but we don't always like to do that with other people. And if we did that a little bit more with other people and just say, this is who they are, and I have to make a decision on, am I okay with that or am I not? And then there either needs to be, some sort of conversation or stepping away or whatever happens. But yeah, I think there can be definite difficult dynamics in mother-daughter relationships. And especially when the mother is someone that has just this deep drive, like Fee's mother does, of success is important, our standing in society is important, how other people see us is important. And Fee is not as concerned by that because she already feels like these people don't understand me. So I'm the one that's going to go to this town that I've never been to and plan my aunt's funeral, and it's going to be fine, even without your help, Mom. And she asks her dad, and her dad's like, I don't want to fight with your mom either. He's like, I want to stay married, keep me out of it. And he just says, I wish you luck. I'm sure you can do it. And she's on her own to go. She's already promised now. So it's one of those things where I think the daughter wants to prove to the mother that she can do it. That's what a lot of black sheeps in the family go. I want to prove to you that I am okay in this decision and I am going to be fine no matter what.
Yes, ma'am. I have about three more questions for you. Run at the bottom of the show. Three more questions, right? So I want to talk about the importance of magical realism. In today's society, it can feel so heavy and stressful, and sometimes even hopeless. What is the importance of having the magic and the whimsical and things like that in these stories?
Whimsy is so important to me as a reader. It's one of the things that I think that does keep us completely out of those dark spaces that can be in our heads and that can be in our hearts. Because I don't like reading reviews very often, but every so often, I'll see reviews of some other people's work where readers will say, well, this didn't feel realistic. And I'm like, well, that's part of the beauty of fantasy and, science fiction and these types of stories is to give you that escapism. It's to give you something different than realism, because realism is a lot sometimes. Not everybody wants to sort of go through their whole day and then sit down at the end of the day to read more realism. Sometimes that's a lot. And it gives you a chance to experience a magical world where you get to see things with a little bit of awe and a little bit of amazement. Because I think as adults, especially, we get out of the habit of being fascinated by things. You know, we just go, oh, this ain't, that's not real, or this is stupid, or this is silly. We don't allow ourselves that awe and that wonder that could probably be really sort of soul soothing in a lot of ways. And fantasy and fiction can give you a little bit of a taste like that magical world where you just go, this is amazing. How did this person come up with this world or the idea for how this world works? And giving ourselves permission to step away from, does it feel real or is it realistic? And just go, I'm going to step through this, let's call it a portal. I'm going to step through this portal into the world of this book. And I'm just going to allow myself to be immersed in this story. And we don't always give ourselves permission for that. People just, sometimes as difficult as life is, people are reluctant to let go of the realism. And I just say to those people, give fantasy and fiction a chance to sort of lure you in a little bit, be a little bit beguiling and interesting and, awestruck. And if it gets too much, you can go, oh, it is fiction, or you can close the book and come back to it. But let yourself, a little part of yourself, have the ability to experience awe and magic and amazement, and realize that you can find it woven in with a little history and folklore if you like that, or you can find it just something that's so completely different than our real world that you just go, oh, I need to buckle in for this. This is out here. So all of that is available to you, and whatever you need to sort of escape. If you like a science fiction story with a little bit of futurism, there's that available to you. If you like something that's a little bit spine tingling, a little bit creepy, that's available to you. But if you want something that's magical and fantastical, all of that is there for when you need to step away from the real world.
And here I go 2 times in one show talking about just promoting fictional writing because I do read a lot of nonfiction myself, a lot of history, a lot of things, our history. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, people inbox me all the time, like, how do you read so much things about slavery and so many things about the Black Panther Party, so many things about policing and mass incarceration? Like these topics are very super heavy to most. I know that. And I guess it's kind of like being a funeral director or a mortician. Like you deal with this thing a lot. You kind of immune to it, I guess. But I know for the average person, they can't really do that all the time. So these books, this magical, this fantasy, I think it's important for those readers to be able to escape and just not be in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even if you have to have two books at one time where you read a couple of chapters of maybe the heavier thing, and you go, okay, I've done two big chunky chapters of this book. I need to sit this down. Let me pick up something lighter, easier, um, just to have a balance. Because, like you said, when you get used to it, especially as someone who's um, who's a scholar, who this is what you do. This is your job. You know you're a teacher and a lecturer and a scholar. This is your bread and butter, and you're used to it. But the other person who just goes, I really want to know more about this, but whoo, this is a lot. You can trade off with some other lightweight things to make it a little bit less burdensome.
And I want to get into your reading habits in a little bit. Matter of fact, the next question about your reading habits, but people will be amazed if they saw my Kindle library, which currently I have 1,500 books in my Kindle. Blew my mind. And my Audible library, I have a lot more fiction in there than anybody would ever. I have a lot more romance in there. I have a lot more fantasy and like Game of Thrones and like the Lord of the Rings and like just way out there stuff. Graphic novels and comics and like you said, I do rotate my reading to where I am giving myself that reprieve. Like, all right, I did my work or
Mhm.
whatever, and now I'm just pure pleasure of doing it. So I do have those things myself.
I have a little bit of everything. I've got a Kindle, but I've got a huge library of physical books as well. Um, I have some romance. I have mystery. I love a great mystery. I have some horror and some sci-fi. Um, I was a judge for the Shirley Jackson Awards a couple of years ago, and some people sent physical books as well as like digital ones. So I have a few that I've kept from there that are sort of like that uh, slightly creepy, not quite horror, but like haunted housey type stuff. I have books on root work and conjure. I have books from friends of mine who are authors who I've either blurbed them or I just loved their books and wanted to get a copy. Um, I also have lots of short story collections, and I have a lot of short story collections that are older, like from the 1920s by Black writers. I have some from the 1960s by Black writers as well. I have a couple of short story collections that are by Black writers that went out of print that publishers went and found and said, we want to republish these books. Um, and they're just things that I return to again and again because I love experiencing not only that type of storytelling, but just, I don't know, some of the wisdom in it. I have some um, books by Caribbean authors and some books by some East Asian authors as well, and some Native authors' work also. Um, and I just love to read a variety. I think I've got some poetry up there as well. I have some friends who are poets that recommend work to me sometimes, and I'll grab a volume. And sometimes it's a really slim volume, and I just feel like I can sit down and read a couple of them and just sort of experience the imagery and the power of those words in just this tiny volume. It'll be something like 30 pages, and I'll just go, oh, just the amazing wisdom in this short volume is phenomenal.
So I'm just starting to get a little bit more into mystery myself. I love S.A. Cosby right now. Currently, he's an amazing writer in that genre. Who are some of your favorite mystery writers?
Well, I did mention Rudolph Fisher initially with The Conjure Man Dies. That's one of my favorites. There is a series of mystery novels, and I'm trying to remember who the author is, but I might look it up really quickly. But it's, let's see here. It is called Blanche on the Lamb by Barbara Neely. And she has a series of these mysteries um, featuring a Black woman domestic worker who solves crimes. I can't remember how many books there are, but I think there's 5 or 6. Um, I like, let's see, one of the ones that I really enjoyed, especially, and I'm trying to look to see on my bookshelf if I have it up there, and I probably don't have it up there. No, I don't see it. I've got so many books in here. Some of them not always turned towards the front. Um, there's I think it's a new book that's come out by Walter Mosley.
My mom loves Walter Mosley. She's a big Walter Mosley fan.
Yes, I used to read a lot of his Easy Rawlins books, um, and I think there's a couple of movies based on his stuff also. And one of the ones I also think that um, I really like is there's a fantasy there's a fantasy one, oh, called The Woodwife by Terry Windling, and she is mostly like a writer who does folk tales and things, but this one is tied up a lot with Native American mythology and folklore, and it's set in the American Southwest. And I read it and I see some of the connection between a lot of Gullah Geechee folklore and Native folklore as well. This one is Navajo Dine folklore specifically. And I absolutely love that book. And it's a mystery, but it's also tied up in um, a search for self for a woman who's like in her 40s. And I'm so glad that a lot of writers are writing older main characters now. And not everyone is, in their teens or early 20s. And seeing someone who's gone, look, I've had a career, I've had a relationship, I'm starting over, and seeing that there's still lots of life left to lead, even at that age. And having that tied up with a mystery is really, really amazing.
Thank you for adding to our ever-growing TBR list. You want to add to it, right?
My pleasure. My pleasure. Always happy to do that.
So the next question was, I love asking my scholars this question, Lee. How do you read? Is the question. How do you go about the craft of reading? We all have our own little quirks and things that we do. How do you read?
Oh, it depends on if I'm being asked to read for work. Like if someone says, hey, will you provide a blurb for my book? I read that differently than just reading from my own enjoyment. If I'm reading for, say, something that's going to be used in marketing, I usually will read that on my Kindle because the Kindle lets me sort of like mark something or take a note or something like that, and that I can come back to kind of help me put together my words on the book. If I'm reading just for my own enjoyment, I will, I either read before I go to sleep at night, and usually that's a physical book, sometimes a Kindle, depending on where I've found one or if I can snatch a deal on a book or something I've really been looking forward to reading. Because every so often I'll see somebody say, oh, this book is marked down for the next 2 days or for this weekend, and I'll grab it.
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes. That's how I have 1,500 books. Got to get the
yes,
Kindle deals.
it's so easy to do. But every so often, especially if I'm buying a book that is an older book, sometimes I'll find it in a secondhand bookshop. Sometimes I'll find it on online on one of these sites that do reprinted books or rare books or something like that. And having that physical copy, I just go and find a chair, sit on the side of the sofa, have my cup of hot tea or whatever, and just put my feet up. And I'm like, yes, I'm like nestled down and I'm here, come hell or high water, I am spending some time with this book today. And I make myself comfortable and I make it, an enjoyable experience.
You mentioned taking notes in your Kindle earlier for work, it sounds like. Do you annotate your physical book? You see all the tabs I have on your book. You probably can't see it in the camera. All of your
Yes,
tabs and
yes, I
flags
see.
and
Oh, yes.
all of my show notes are in here. So I love marking up my book.
I usually don't write in my books. I have, like you have, I have tabs. I have been asked, like, when I've given away a book or something like that, people have asked, will I annotate it? And I have done that, and I'll do it on tabs because I don't know the person receiving the book if they wanted me to actually physically write on the book. So I just will do little tabs and go, this isn't where the book originally started. The book originally started here, and then I went back and wrote this section because I wanted this to happen or whatever have you. But I typically don't write in the book, but I am a person who likes to reread books. So I'll get to the point where I go, oh, today is I'm going to start my reread of Mama Day, or I'm going to start my reread of Linden Hills, um, or I'm going to pick a couple of J. California Cooper short stories to reread because I want those words again. I want that feeling again. Um, or I want to look at the craft that Ann Petrie did in the street. I want to look at the craft that William Melvin Kelly did for Dancers on the Shore, or um, Kathleen Collins' Whatever Happened to Interracial Love collection. So I will pick and choose and reread sections of things. So I don't necessarily write in them because I want to be able to re-experience. It's a year later, it's 2 years later, it's 5 years later, I'm coming back to these words. Do they mean something different to me now in this season? So I like to experience that and see
I
how I
want to
feel.
I want to share something that's rare on this podcast, but this particular episode we have talked about death, we talked about grief and all these things, so it's kind of fitting for this show. For the past 10 years or so, most of my annotations in my book, I write it so like hypothetically 50 years from now, if somebody find my book, I'm giving them on a certain point, this book relates to this, or this movie relates to that, or this story is not really for myself. I'm writing it to a future person I don't know. And maybe you'll
Wow.
find value in this note. Like leaving breadcrumbs almost. I'm writing in the margin things that I hope because I love used bookstores as well. And unfortunately, most times I'm the only black person in the used bookstore here. So when I go there, the owner of the store says, Sean, look, somebody brought a collection of books that I think you would like. And one guy brought, his wife had passed, he got a PhD, and he brought all the books that she used to get her do a dissertation. All these historical,
Wow.
amazing books. They all cost a lot of money per book. And I bought them slowly but surely over time. They kept them on the side for me. And so I have all the books that she used for her PhD. I see all her little highlights and little things she
Oh,
wrote. And
that's
I read her
wonderful.
words. I look at those words and it's like, that's how I started annotating as if I was dead, somebody reading my work. Because I know how I feel reading her work.
I love that. I really do. I know a couple of people who, when they did their wills, they made a point of saying who they wanted books in their library to go to. And as a writer, I learned that you can will even your notes to another person or
What?
to the
I've never
city.
heard this.
Yes, absolutely.
Never.
You can say that as a writer, all your notebooks, all of that sort of stuff, if you want them donated to like your city or your state, and they will create like an author space for you. Or sometimes people will do it with their university or something. And they'll say, these are the notes so that someone in future years can go, I've stumbled upon this person's work before. This institution has a section dedicated to this person's notes and library. And that's how, I don't know if you've ever seen the image of one of Octavia Butler's notebooks, where she's written out her intentions on that sort of like yellow bit of divider between the spiral notebook sections. And so much of it came to pass in her lifetime. But it's just in her handwriting, and it's this wonderful way of seeing these are my intentions. This is what I want to do. I want to become a best-selling author, and I want to do this. And it's just so amazing. And I think making plans to donate not only your library, but your notes as a creative is an important thing to do for later generations to see where ideas came from,
Yes.
especially with moving into such moving deeper into such a digital age.
Yes, we are.
It's
Yes, we are.
important to preserve those things.
I love one of our great African historians, Dr. Ben Jokinen. His whole entire library was donated to the Nation of Islam, I believe, right? Minister Louis Farrakhan got his library, and Dr. John Henry Clark, my favorite scholar of all time, his whole home is his whole is a library, and now it's converted over into like a historical space and stuff. Like I love hearing stories about people's mass library being used that way.
Yes, I love it. And it also helps people draw connections. I read a copy of a short story collection called Tropic Death by Eric Walrond, who is a Bahamian writer. I think he's deceased now, probably, I don't know, probably 10 years or so. But when I read his books, I see some of the words that he uses I recognize as Gullah words, but obviously it's Bahamian Creole. And I realize there's such a connection that we have that I may or may not have realized if I hadn't read that short story collection. And it's really, just a fascinating tie to show how connected we really truly are.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So my last question for the night. I know it's late where you are. I'm trying to respect time. I know it's late. Um, the most important topic, the most serious topic part of today, to be honest. Currently, right now in the U.S., in your South Carolina, I believe Charlotte, South Carolina, we have the ICE agent conversion down on the city, everything going on like that. I know you where you are right now. You seeing it, but like, what are some of your thoughts about what's going on right now in Charlotte?
It's in Charlotte, it's come to Charleston from what I've seen as well. And it's one of those things that if you had asked people 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they would have said it's something that can never happen. And I've also seen a lot of people who don't know our history, who are in deep despair because they go, this is unprecedented. We've never seen this before. And it's not true.
I hate that phrase. I hate when they do that. I hate
Yeah.
it.
And I see it so often. And I think, now that I'm a person of a certain age, um, I see these younger people going, oh my gosh, this has never happened before. And what are we going to do? And I want to encourage these people to either talk to their elders who have experienced this. I heard stories from my grandmother, from my mother. My mother went to college in Alabama in the 60s. So she was there for the marches and the sit ins and all of that. And people think that it's an eternity ago. And it wasn't. You know, I can ask my mother now about stuff. So
Yeah,
learning your history, talking to people, realizing that these are things that our people have already experienced. And how did we get through these times in the 30s, in the 40s, throughout the 60s, even into the 70s? How did we get through these times? And the answer for a lot of it is stronger communities. We've gotten to be a society of individuals again. And one of the things that I was talking about this actually with my mother when I visited her the last time, and she said something to me that I thought was so powerful because of what she went through, the things that she saw, the things that happened when she was at a college age. And she said, the thing that I see that y'all don't know how to do anymore is y'all don't know how to be in community with people you don't like. She said, do you think that I liked everybody that I stood shoulder to shoulder with and marched with? Do you think I wanted to go home and have dinner with all those people? No. But we had a common goal, a common cause. And she said, that's the biggest thing that I see happening with young people right now, is you don't know how to be in community with people you don't like. If you don't like somebody, you want to cut them off completely and be isolated completely. And learning how to be in community with people that you don't love or like is so important right now. And that's the thing that's going to get you through this. And going back to what we said earlier on the call is sharing what you have, sharing resources, sharing knowledge. There was it was either on Threads or X or one of those things. There was a guy who was a farmer, and he just went and dug up his entire field of potatoes and put them in the back of this massive pickup with a sign saying, fill a 5-gallon bucket. And it went out on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, Threads, and people in the area came. And these are the small things that we used to do without thinking when we were smaller, isolated communities. My grandmother could have sent me across the road to one of our neighbors and say, Grandma needs an egg or something. Can she borrow an egg? And when the cake was finished, I go and take some slices over to her. And then when we went and bought our eggs, we go and return it. And finding a way to be in community with people that aren't your favorite people all the time. And standing up for people that you may not be the best of friends, but you don't want to see them treated that way.
Now, you live abroad, real quick. You live abroad right now.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks here, they think, you know what? Everything getting so crazy. I'm gonna just pack up. I'm gonna just move somewhere else, and it's gonna be all good, and it's gonna be peaches and cream somewhere else. Not understanding the global system of white supremacy. What are race relations like where you are currently, if you can share that?
Yeah, I can share that. I live in Southeast England. I have to admit that I live a pretty isolated life. I don't get out much, but that's not really any different than when I was in the States. I didn't really get out much. I went to work, I did my grocery shopping, and I went home, which is essentially what I do now, but I work from home. I go out and do my grocery shopping. I might go to a couple of stores that I'm familiar with, and then I come home. So from friends that I've talked with or accounts that I've seen on social media, things do happen everywhere in the world. And we have to understand that in order to have peace, we sometimes have to create and formulate our own peace. And sometimes it's not easy to do. And finding ways and pockets of security and safety are essential. And it might feel limiting in some ways, but we have to be ourselves in this world. And we have to be aware, and we have to be cautious, but we have to also make and find community everywhere we go, everywhere we go. So there isn't probably any one spot in the world that you can go that you just go, this is racism free. And as an American, even if you go to countries that are a majority Black population, you're still going as an American and carrying the stereotypes of what being an American is. So you might be treated a certain way and you go, oh, this is horrible racism, but these are other Black people that are treating you this way. It's because you're an American person. And there are stereotypes that come along with that. And sometimes people feed into those stereotypes. Other times, if you've educated yourself about what an area is going to be like and what your expectation is, because you can't move to a different country and go, I'm going to expect it to be like the country that I just left.
No,
it's like what, yeah, it's like what you and I were talking about earlier. Some people want realism in their lives all the time. And they're unwilling to go outside that to read fiction. But if you're going to sort of travel or move to another country, you're going to have to embrace that this country is going to be different than the United States.
When in
Can you
Rome, do
come
as in Rome. It's a real thing. When in Rome, do as in Rome.
and you can still find things that you like. I have found a place here that sells grits, so I can buy grits and make them when I want to.
Okay, now.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
so I find
Okay.
things that I
Yeah.
want that
Yeah.
make my life the way that I want it to be. But and I'm starting to see more and more people do this and talk about this is curating your own life.
Yes. Come on
We've
now.
got to do that. We've got to
Come on
take
now.
back control of
Yeah.
curating our own life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do we want our life to look and to be? Because we're going, oh, well, I wish that this was different. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that we wish were different.
Yes.
But you've got to make a point to craft your life the way you want to and start
Right.
small with little things that you can have and incorporate into your life that you go, this gives me joy. This gives me happiness.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
doing this activity, or I've bought myself this one small treat thing, and I love that I have this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
just build from there and finding those pockets of joy. One of my friends says, I am obsessed with candles. And she said, just having this certain specific candle, and when I light it, it just puts me in a place of peace
Wow.
because
I love
I
that.
have.
I love that.
So those small things,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and just build from there and make sure that you understand and know that you have control over certain parts of your life. Even when the world out there feels out of control,
Yeah. You control it. Yeah.
find the things that you
You can't
control
control
about you in your life,
it.
and it will make you feel more grounded and more secure and more at peace. And that's what we all want right now.
Yeah. Being a prior military guy, I was blessed to go to about like 25 countries, give or take. And
Oh,
when I see in
wow.
the news, a lot of like basketball players in particular, because of course they go overseas to make more money overseas abroad, and I see them getting in trouble in all these different countries. I'm thinking to myself, you're trying to operate like you did in the States, but it's a way different jurisdiction where you are. You're not doing as in Rome. You're doing what you want, and it's like it's not gonna fly.
Absolutely. There's
It's not gonna fly.
being aware of the person that you are and where you fit into hierarchy is important in a lot of countries that especially that these basketball players go to. And we don't always realize that as people in the West, we have a lot of space to do and talk about things and operate. Um, but it's like there's a blog that I read, and not to hold you up, I'm sorry, but there's a blog that I read that was specifically written for debut writers. And one of the things that I read there that I thought was really impactful was she says, recognize where you are. You're now a published writer. And there are a lot of people out there who would like to be a published writer. So even though you aren't exactly where you want to be necessarily in your career, recognize that you have reached a certain status that a portion of the population hasn't reached and they're still aspiring to. So make sure that when you talk about the industry or when you talk about writing or you talk about craft, you talk about your work, keep that in mind. You can still talk honestly about it and talk about the good and the bad that's associated with it, but realize that you're in a position where people are looking to you, and how do you want that to come across? You might still feel like the same person, and you are the same person to you and your family and those who love you, but now you're to the world, you're a published writer. So make sure you just keep in mind, in the back of your mind, when you have these conversations, what that means to you and to the people that are looking to you to go, is that a model that I want to follow?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's amazing, amazing advice, amazing words. Thank you so much for your time on the podcast. I totally enjoyed this conversation. I love the book. Where can they go and find your book? What do you advise them to find your publication? What's
Yes,
best?
you can find all of my publications on my website, which is edenroyce.com. You can also find me on, I'm on Threads and I'm on Instagram at Eden Royce Books, where I publish and, well, post and talk about my work and the work of friends and family and all that good stuff. And I'm also on Blue Sky at Eden Royce. So any of those things are places that you can find me. And also, I think the bio in my Instagram has my link tree, where you can find a lot of where to buy my books, but also links to my essays, like the one that I mentioned about my grandmother's death folder early on in the call, where you can go and read those essays for free.
Thank you very, very much. Anybody that's watching the show, you stayed around for all this time. We appreciate it. We love it. Thanks for the comments in the chat. Y'all always such an educated chat. Anybody watching in the future, still leave comments. I do pride myself on going back and trying to answer bad comments, man. So please leave us comments. We appreciate y'all energy and attention. Thank y'all very much for the next show on P Experience. Thank you.